Hi everyone, my name is Anthony and welcome back to another virtual lunch and learn. This week we'll be having a two-part presentation talking about balancing your work, life, and technology to make the most of your time. We would like to note that this information is intended for educational purposes and should not be interpreted as medical advice. Enjoy! Before we jump into our discussion for today, let's all start with a one-question quiz. Can you solve this puzzle? We all start with 1,440. No one gets more or less. We're all on the same level, and we all make choices about how we spend our allotment. What are we talking about? If you had answered time, you are correct. 1,440 is the number of minutes in a day, and we all start with that same amount, no more and no less. And in our fast-paced world, we're constantly trying to do more, faster, and often struggling to find the time to fit in everything we want to accomplish. In many ways, time is like money. Both are precious resources we can use to achieve goals or to attain things that we may need or want. We have a limited supply of both time and money, and we often have to choose one expenditure over the other. On the other hand, time is very different from money. Whereas money can be saved, borrowed, or even stolen, time can only be spent. We each get 60 minutes in an hour. Once that time is spent, it's gone forever and there's no way we can get it back. Time is the root of the life balance struggle. To think about it in another way, here's a quote from Carl Sandburg. Time is the coin of your life. It is the only coin you have, and only you can determine how it is spent. Be careful lest you let other people spend it for you. Ultimately, balancing our lives comes down to our choices. We know how we spend our time is the root of challenges related to balancing our lives. Let's talk a little bit about some of the contributing factors and how we can create not only balance in our lives, but also blend the many roles we play. Our focus is ultimately on aligning our values with how we choose to spend what Carl Sandburg calls the coin of life. First, think about the many roles you play in the course of a day or a week. We've listed a few of the common examples here, but what others can you think of? In addition, you may wear many hats within your different roles. For example, at work you might be leading certain projects or tasks, supporting others, and have a variety of ongoing daily or weekly responsibilities. As a parent, your role may include meal preparation, homework helper, activity taxi, and everything in between. Most of us are pulled in many directions. When you think about where your time goes in a day, on the surface, you might think it looks like this: scheduled and compartmentalized. Perhaps this even feels or seems ideal. You set aside time for your work, family activities, and other tasks you need to complete. However, for most of us, reality seems to feel more like this. There's an overlap between activities and responsibilities, and even if you are physically in one place, at work for a chunk of the day, at a child's event in the evening, and at home at night, there's likely some mental overlap. Leaving home to go to work doesn't mean you never think about issues at home. An upset family member, planning for dinner, or what you need to do at the end of the day. And leaving work doesn't always mean fully leaving it behind. The day's events may still be in your mind, and depending on your role, technology on a phone or a laptop may keep you connected to work long after you left the building. In addition, many times we try to multitask and focus on multiple priorities at the same time. All this overlap can be a recipe for stress and exhaustion. No matter what our day looks like, we have to return to the ultimate reality. The time we have in our day is limited. You'll never have more than 1,440 minutes in a day. So, how do you want to spend them? What are your values? And how does the way you spend your time align with what's important to you? And how can you make the best use of the limited time you have? These are not simple questions to answer. In fact, they ultimately create our moments, our days, our weeks, and our years. They create the lives that we live. Now let's talk more about those other roles. When you think about your life and the roles you play, what matters most to you? If we made a list of our most important things in life, they would all be different, but we might see some common threads. For many, family, friends, and health would rise to the top. Career, education, and having fun are likely to fall on that list as well. Have you ever heard the story of the philosophy professor and the large mayonnaise jar? The professor begins his class with a large, empty jar and fills it to the top with rocks. He asks his class if it is full, and they agreed it was. Then he added a box of pebbles and shook the jar a bit to allow the pebbles to fall in place between the rocks. He again asked the class if the jar was full, and they agreed that it was. Finally, he poured sand into the jar, filling in the remaining areas, and the class agreed that the jar was full. Jars are a representation of our lives. The rocks are the things that matter most. For many of us, things like the people we care about. If only those things existed in our lives, they would still be meaningful. The pebbles represent the other things that matter in life, like work or school. The sand is everything else, the little stuff, such as possessions or material things. If you put the sand in the jar first, there's no room for anything else, and the same is true of our lives. If we spend too much time on the things that are less meaningful to us, we may miss out on the things that matter most. The message here is to take care of the rocks first. The things that truly bring you happiness are the most critical to your well-being. Everything else is just pebbles and sand. So how can you make sure you make the room for the rocks in your life? Let's try another puzzle. What is the most important priority and something that is critical to achieving anything in your life, yet is often overlooked and the last on our list? The answer is self-care, making time for yourself and taking care of you. When our lives get busy, this is often the first thing that drops. Would you agree? But here's why it matters. When is the last time you were on an airplane and really paid attention to the safety briefing? What does the flight attendant always say about the oxygen mask? Every talk includes a reminder to put your own mask on first before assisting others. Why? It's because if you don't get on your mask so you're getting the oxygen you need to survive, you won't be able to help yourself or anyone else. Many people put themselves last because they were taught to think of others first or that it's selfish to think about yourself. The truth is, taking care of yourself isn't selfish, it's essential. It helps you succeed in playing your many roles in life. Let's take a small step back and think about the time we have to fulfill our many roles. Do you know where your time is going? How much control do you have over your day? How much can you relate to each of the following statements? I make time for myself. I know where I spend my time. I'm able to dedicate enough time to the areas of my life that matter most to me. I use time management skills. I leave open time to handle unexpected priorities, and I use technology to help me manage my time effectively. How you respond to these statements offers a high-level view of your overall feelings about where your time is going. The first statement assesses how well you make time for self-care. The second question helps you understand how well you know where your time is going. The third question is a pulse check on how much time you're dedicating to the rocks or most important things in your life. The rest relates to strategies that help you juggle not only the rocks, but also the pebbles and the sand, work, school, and other things that you need to fit into your life. What do your answers to these questions tell you about your priorities and how the way you spend your time is aligning with them? When you think about where your time goes, there are some things that are non-negotiable. Sleep time is one very good example. Most adults need at least 7 to 9 hours of sleep per night. While you might be able to function on less for a while, lack of sleep creates a sleep debt that must be repaid. Sleep deprivation is linked to a variety of health problems, decreased productivity, and safety. Another example is work time. Depending on your job, you may be required to work specific hours or a certain number of hours per week. Some jobs provide more flexibility than others, but there is likely a minimum amount of time you need to dedicate to completing your assigned tasks each week. Sometimes people feel guilty for spending time at work, but it's important to remember that working often connects to other factors that matter to you, such as providing for your family. When it comes to work, whether it's at your job or tasks at home, time management can help you make the best use of the time that you have. We'll talk more about strategies to help. For discretionary time, you likely have more choices about how you spend it. For people who want to change their eating habits or lose weight, tracking food choices is a common practice to help them gather more data about their current habits. The same concept can apply to creating a better blend of activities in your day. Even if you feel like you have a pretty good idea of how you spend your time, consider challenging your assumptions by doing a simple time study. You can do this by tracking your time for a couple of days, aiming for 15 to 30 minutes increments. Simply record what you are doing during each of those time blocks. You can do this in a simple notebook, or a document, or even on a mobile device. After you've tracked, take a look back at your log. Where are you spending too much time? Where are you spending too little? How is technology impacting your time, for better or worse? This exercise may help you look at some of the areas where you'd like to improve and potentially help you identify some of your key priorities. If you're like many people, you may find that you're simply trying to do too much into your allotted 24 hours. This is where prioritization can help. Here's a quick quiz about how many of us spend our time. According to a recent study, what activity consumes an average of 23 hours per week for adults in the U.S.? If you said online communication, you are correct. This includes things like email, texting, social media, and other forms of digital communication. The study found that time on digital media surpassed time spent on TV for the first time in 2013. It also estimates that U.S. adults spend over 11 hours per day with some form of major media, whether online, TV, radio, or print. Let's take a moment to talk a little bit more about technology. When it comes to balance in life, the contributions of technology can often be a double-edged sword. There are certainly many benefits to technology, which probably helps to explain why tablets, smartphones, and other devices continue to increase in popularity. Technology allows for more connectedness. A coworker whose help you need to solve a problem is likely just a phone call or an email away. If you have children, a cell phone may provide peace of mind so you can keep tabs on their whereabouts and they can contact you in an emergency. Social networking sites have made it easier than ever to make professional connections and stay in touch with family and friends. Some research has even shown that technology may help certain groups of youth who might feel isolated to be more connected and make friends. Some technology has allowed for new forms of physical activity, often in the comfort of your own home and without the cost of a gym membership. Examples include active video games and on-demand exercise videos. Technology can provide many different tools for education and learning. It's now possible to get a degree or earn continuing education hours completely online without ever having to set foot in a classroom. Technology use in schools continues to grow. More than ever before, we have information at our fingertips and literally in the palm of our hands, thanks to mobile devices. There's no doubt that many forms of technology have made life easier, especially for simpler tasks like balancing a checkbook or editing a document. Need directions? Want to find out what time a local restaurant closes? Can't remember who invented the light bulb? Chances are the answers are just a few clicks or taps away. You might even be able to ask your phone to find them for you. While it certainly has a lot of positives and in many cases makes our lives easier, technology also has a number of potential downsides. Mobile technology in particular can cause some to remain connected to work after hours. Phone calls and emails on a smartphone can keep many people tied to work electronically. According to the American Psychological Association, 59% of men and 45% of women report checking work-related messages on the weekend, and 49% of men and 30% of women admit to checking them while on vacation. While some people do report that connectivity helps them find balance and be more productive, many others report that it increases their workload and makes it hard to take a break from work or to stop thinking about it. Social networking does make it possible to stay connected with others, but researchers are starting to look at whether it's really a replacement for traditional face-to-face interaction. Even in social settings, it's not uncommon to see people updating social networking sites and posting photos. Is it possible that a constant connection to mobile devices and social media decreases the quality of those interactions? In our mobile, online world, it's easy to be left with the feeling that everything is instantaneous, even things that cannot or should not be. As we know from our quiz question, technology can also be a potential time drain. How much time do you spend on social media sites, surfing the internet, watching television, or playing video games? How often does this take away from your other activities? Ideally, the goal with technology is to learn to use it in ways that can help you move closer to the balance and blend of activities you want to achieve. We'll take this moment to wrap up part one of our presentation. So far, we've discussed the importance of time and why we should make the most of the limited amount that we have. Join us in part two where we discuss some strategies to make the most of our time. Thank you.